Before the tick was born, the world breathed freely, without numbers, without measure or fear. Time was a rhythm of tides and stars, not an empire's weapon, nor a merchant's tool. But one island, veiled in fog and ambition, looked upon the heavens and whispered control. And from that whisper came the greatest illusion ever forged by human hands, order itself. Britain was not yet mighty, but its hunger for certainty burned brighter than its coal. Its sailors sought routes through endless grey waters, guided by prayers and trembling compasses of brass. Longitude, that invisible ghost dividing east from west, mocked every ship with silence and deceit. A single misjudged hour could turn a voyage of trade into a grave of splintered hope. The crown, desperate to own the sea, offered fortune to whoever could command the hours. £20,000 for mastery of the unmastered time measured, carried, and trusted by sailors' hearts. Scholars in London argued with telescopes, while dreamers carved prototypes from oak and brass. But in a quiet workshop, a carpenter named John Harrison into the heartbeat of precision. He built clocks not for parlours, but for storms, not for beauty, but for survival. His hands bled over gears that refused to lose rhythm even when the sea screamed. Decade after decade, his obsession sharpened until perfection was trapped inside a ticking cage. When his chronometer returned from voyage, faithful to the second, the empire found its prophecy fulfilled. Britain could now measure the world with confidence, tracing maps like veins across blue infinity. Merchants rejoiced, navies advanced, and the empire began to pulse in mechanical certainty. Each ship leaving London carried a heartbeat wound in brass time, domesticated, loyal, unflinching. And from that heartbeat, Britain learned its most dangerous lesson: whoever controls time, controls destiny. The Royal Observatory at Greenwich rose as a temple to this new invisible divinity. Astronomers watched the sky not for wonder, but to align the empire's veins of steel. On that hill above the Thames, they drew the line that split existence into before and after. 0 degrees longitude Greenwich Mean Time became the axis upon which the modern world would turn. It was not discovery. It was decree, a quiet claim on the rhythm of reality itself. Here, said Britain, begins the world's heartbeat. From here, all civilization shall be synchronized. The empire's ships, merchants, and colonies wound their watches to London's unyielding measure. And without firing a cannon, Britain conquered the present moment everywhere the sun could shine. Steam followed wind, rails followed sails. The land itself began to echo the empire's tempo. Before the railways, noon was personal, defined by light and faith, not machinery or decree. But locomotives demanded precision, because one late train meant catastrophe, yielding mangled iron. So the island unified its hours, binding every town to the capital's invisible command. Church bells surrendered to whistles, roosters to sirens, instinct to instruction, peace to punctuality. Time ceased to be local. It became imperial, stamped with the authority of Parliament and pound. Factories joined the chorus, dark cathedrals of smoke where men moved like cogs of devotion. Each whistle carved the day into labour and rest, turning human breath into industrial rhythm. Punctuality became virtue. Hesitation became crime. Lateness a moral defect unfit for civilization. Children learned the gospel of precision before the stories of gods or kings or mercy. The empire's creed was efficiency, and its altar was the relentless march of the minute hand. To waste a moment was heresy. To master the clock was the highest faith. Telegraphs stretched across continents, copper veins humming with electrical sermons of obedience. Messages once carried by ship arrived at the speed of lightning and empire combined. A command whispered in London struck Bombay before its echo left the minister's chamber. The world shrank to the size of a schedule, and distance died inside the wire. Greenwich Mean Time became the empire's crown jewel, polished by necessity, defended by profit and pride. Every colony bent its daily life to London's rhythm, convinced it was progress, not captivity. The merchants called it convenience, the officials called it unity, the poets called it loss. Because the sun no longer decided when the day began, England did. In India, trains sliced through kingdoms older than the language of their engineers. Schedules ruled villages that once moved by monsoon, prayer, and the patient turning of stars. Clocks stood in stations like foreign idols, worshipped by those who feared missing their train. The empire's civilizing mission was measured not in compassion, but in minutes made obedient. Across Africa, pocket watches gleamed beside rifles. Timekeeping arrived hand in hand with conquest. Elders who once read the shadow of the acacia consulted ticking brass from Birmingham. Colonial officers demanded punctual reports, punctual harvests, punctual lives, all wound to London's hour. Even the silence between sunsets became property, divided into increments of imperial expectation. Back home, factories swelled with smoke, railways shrieked, and Big Ben crowned the capital's obsession. Its chime rolled across rooftops and alleyways, binding beggar and banker to one shared tempo. Every clang was a reminder that the empire's heart beat louder than its conscience. Britain had built the perfect machine until the machine began to own its maker. Workers felt the weight of every second. They did not control it, could not escape. The bell that started their labor also marked the erosion of their stolen lifetimes. Each shift was another thread in a web of invisible servitude spun by schedule and need. The same precision that built wealth turned freedom into the most carefully timed illusion of all. Still, the nation celebrated its mastery, blind to the cost hidden within its symmetry. Parliament praised efficiency as moral strength. Newspapers printed timetables like sacred text. The island congratulated itself for conquering chaos, unaware that chaos had merely changed disguise. For the faster the world turned, the less anyone remembered who had wound the clock. Then came the year 1884, when the world gathered to decide whose seconds were supreme. In Washington, D.C., delegates from 25 nations argued where the new age should begin. France offered Paris, America offered neutrality, but commerce had already chosen its ruler. Greenwich, said the maps, was already the point from which the world drew breath. When the vote ended, the empire's wish became humanity's law. Time began beneath British skies. Every nation adjusted its hours to London's pulse, and the earth found a single tempo. The British had conquered space, wealth, and now duration itself, an empire of invisible dominion. No flag needed planting. Every clock on earth now flew its colors in silence. For a while, perfection seemed eternal. Trains ran with grace, ships docked on schedule, and merchants trusted the precision of promise. Children dreamed of punctual futures, and the empire believed it had mastered the chaos of being. But beneath the synchrony, exhaustion gathered like dust inside the cogs of progress. Because control is a fragile illusion, and time owes loyalty to no throne, the same mechanism that united the world began to tighten around its inventor's heart. Each invention shortened distance, quickened pace, and left the island gasping for breath it had timed away. The century's final seconds ticked like distant thunder, carrying the storm of a faster age. The empire that sold time had bound the planet in order, but it could not slow the approaching tide that would wash its certainty away. And somewhere beneath the chime of Big Ben, beneath the comfort of perfect precision, a whisper began, a warning that even masters of time must one day be measured. The 20th century arrived not with dawn, but with engines roaring like impatient gods. Britain's machines still turned, but the rhythm they kept now belonged to the world. The island that had once taught order felt breathless, chasing a tempo of its own design. Factories no longer whispered progress. They screamed exhaustion through smokestacks and broken human lungs. The colonies, too, pulsed with the seconds of an empire that had forgotten compassion. In Calcutta, clocks dictated labor. In Nairobi, they dictated obedience and the illusion of modern grace. Railways stitched continents together, but also stitched souls into timetables they never asked to follow. The empire had sold time as salvation, yet delivered it as a quieter form of rule. London shone like a metronome of civilization, its streets alive with the hum of precision. Big Ben's chime was both comfort and command, echoing across alleys, palaces, and foreign seas. Each note reminded subjects and citizens alike that order was mercy disguised as mastery. But mastery without mercy breeds fatigue, and fatigue corrodes even the finest gears of empire. Then came war, punctual, planned, calculated by the same clocks that once promised progress. Soldiers synchronized watches before battle, believing accuracy could shield them from chaos and fear. Artillery thundered on cue. Death arrived on schedule, efficient and indiscriminate as industry itself. Britain's invention of precision had become the architect of its darkest, most mechanical nightmare. When the guns fell silent, the clocks did not, they ticked through grief without hesitation. Time, indifferent and relentless, refused to pause for mourning or reconsider the course of order. Factories reopened while graves were still fresh. Schedules resumed as if nothing had fractured forever. The empire's heart kept beating, but the sound was hollow, echoing through a world changed beyond measure. The colonies began to stir, their voices rising between the intervals of British authority. They had learned the language of time and now used it to demand their own futures. Independence movements planned revolutions by timetable, striking when the empire's discipline was most vulnerable. The same coordination that once enslaved them became the rhythm of liberation's march. Britain, weary yet proud, tried to hold its dominion together through calendars and contracts. But control measured in minutes cannot outlast the centuries it tried to erase. India struck its own hour, Gunner its own dawn, and the clock tower trembled slightly. For the first time, the empire's seconds no longer echoed perfectly across the surface of the earth. Still, Greenwich kept ticking calm, exact, eternal, its pendulum swaying like a priest in meditation. The observatory no longer ruled an empire, yet its influence circled the planet endlessly. Airports aligned departures to its standard. Markets opened and closed by its invisible decree. Even rebellion moved by the same measure that once defined obedience and empire alike. By mid-century, Britain had lost its colonies, but retained something subtler, more permanent rhythm. GMT remained law, the map still bowed to Greenwich's patient line of certainty. Television broadcasts, financial trades, and scientific experiments all waited for London's quiet permission. The empire's body had collapsed, but its heartbeat echoed through every circuit and transaction. Science, seeking truth, reshaped time, but never escaped the foundation Britain had laid beneath it. Einstein bent it, physicists split it, yet all measured their miracles by Greenwich's zero. Atomic clocks replaced pendulums, satellites replaced observatories, but the axis of order remained unchanged. The empire's shadow had moved from smoke to data, from railways to the orbits of machines. Now the world lived faster than thought, every instant devoured by the hunger for efficiency. Stock exchanges pulsed in microseconds, lives unfolded according to the tyranny of notification and need. What began as Britain's pride had become humanity's addiction, the pursuit of perfect synchronization. We no longer serve crowns or countries, we serve the relentless schedule we inherited unwittingly. In London, tourists stand beneath Big Ben and smile without hearing its deeper message. They check their phones, unaware each device bows silently to Greenwich's ancient authority. Every satellite above them, every algorithm below, still keeps faith with an empire long buried. Time itself remains the one subject that never declared independence from its British maker. The clock that once ruled oceans now rules orbits, guiding planes and payment systems alike. Its power is invisible, its governance constant, its empire larger than any drawn map. Britain's conquest has become civilization's routine, its rhythm beating through fiber optic veins and clouded skies. The empire that sold time still owns the present, even as its monuments decay. History calls this legacy progress, But progress is only control, wearing the mask of comfort. We have measured the world so precisely that wonder itself feels slightly out of place. Each second is counted, but fewer are lived. Every gain of speed costs a little soul. The clock taught us certainty, yet left us terrified of silence and the space between ticks. And so, the empire's greatest invention endures not in power, but in dependency and design. Every heartbeat on Earth still follows a pattern, once drawn by brutish ambition. Time zones remain its quiet borders. Greenwich its ghost capital, precision its everlasting creed. Empires may fall, but habits are harder to kill than armies or ideologies combined, because time is the one empire that never collapses, never surrenders, never sleeps or forgives. It humbles kings, devours nations, and reminds every conqueror that rule is always temporary. Britain tried to own it, but time owns Britain still measured, remembered, eternal, indifferent. The clock ticks on, and with each tick, the echo of empire continues to whisper. If this story changed how you see time, power, and the illusion of control, remember the past still beats beneath the seconds that govern our modern, restless existence. Subscribe for more untold stories of how money, belief, and empire quietly built the world. Because the next revolution won't shout, it will simply arrive, exactly on time.